thank you. Welcome back. Our guest this week in our new section, Coffee with Alex, is Marc Rimond. You probably know him as actor number 3, who died in Titanic, or as being Cersei's double in Game of Thrones. So please, a big applause to Marc Rimond. Marc Rimond. Hey, a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
I am here because the editorial told me to.
Yeah, thank you, please. Hello everybody, we're here with Marc Rimond, who is publishing his new book, Your Boss, Neither Leader Nor Manager. Hello Marc, thank you for being here first of all.
A pleasure.
Thank you. Please tell our audience a bit more of your book, to sum it up.
Well, Alex, my book is one that I've been working on for a while now, and it touches upon the misconceptions that exist, particularly in the business world, in the corporate world, regarding the difference between managers and leaders. It is something that is often cross-referenced and mixed, and it is something that I explore in depth throughout the book and explain a lot of these new tendencies that exist in today's world regarding these two general topics that are so often mistaken.
Interesting. Now, moving on, what were your motivations, first of all, to write the book and then while writing it?
Well, Alex, I remember while studying business in university that they would make us do all of these required readings, and they would present all of these authors which would kind of polarize the topic, which was something that I found really interesting and something that I worked throughout my thesis. And I've now begun to transition it into a more formal written language, a written book. And of course, it's such an interesting topic, and it's a topic that, particularly when coming with these misconceptions, that it just naturally engages with you. And it's something that is talked about so often in the media everywhere. We hear all these big names, and people want to know what it is that makes these people the people, and how it is that they became the people that they are now. So it's something that's very relevant, it's something that's very interesting, and that's what has kept me going up until the point where now we have a physical book.
So you've mentioned a couple of times the term of misconception between managers and leaders. Could you expand a bit on that? Could you explain what you mean by that?
So there's this general tendency going out there in the world that keeps saying that every leader is a manager, but not every manager is a leader. And this is something that for me is not necessarily true. It is not necessarily true in the premise itself, but I also think that the opposite can be said about leaders. It can be said that not all managers are leaders, but not all leaders are managers. And this is something that I talk about very in depth in my book, which is something that, again, I find very interesting. I find very trying to expose something as being general, as the general rule, when it's actually not the case.
So what I understand from that is that leaders and managers are different. So what are those differences between these two, in your opinion, in your view?
So it's a lot on the approach. When thinking generally about a manager, a lot of it has to do with a title, with a hierarchy. Specifically in companies, it's someone that is out there, and his authority is in the fact that he is a manager. That is what makes people follow him, and that is what he sets as his objectives. It is someone that is more worried about the organizational value of the company and managing at the end of the day. And when we transition more towards a leader, we can say that a leader is someone that does similar things, but in a more innate way. There is no hierarchical need necessary. There is nothing that tells you that the leader has to be someone up there in the company. It can be anyone leading a group, regardless of where he is in a company, speaking strictly in the corporate world. And the way that he moves people and the way that he achieves his objectives is more towards influencing people, more than maybe a direct ordering because I am the boss.
I assume, Mark, that you've read Warren Bennis' book, haven't you?
Yes, of course, on becoming a leader.
Yeah, and what do you think of it? What's your view on it?
I had to read this again throughout university, and I've reread it and re-come to it a couple of times. And there's one particular concept in which I very strongly agree with him, and that is his whole overarching theme and idea that leadership is something that comes from a person's self-reflection, that is very personal. That being said, I think that management is something that is often too dismissed. I understand that this guy wasn't writing about management. However, it tags with this general idea that exists out there and this demonizing of the manager as a soulless, only number-focused person. And that is something that I am not entirely, do not entirely support. For me, managers are very important, of course, as well as leaders. And my problem is that this idea of the leader, everybody wants to become a leader now. It's something that has become lionized, idealized. Everybody wants to be a leader, and a manager can never be a good manager if he's not a leader. And that is something that is a bit conflicting for me. That is, of course, without saying that the book I consider is something that is outdated. It's something that does not necessarily apply to today's leaders, these big names that we hear, Jobs, Musk, Gates, all of these people who are different. And again, it's interesting. It's an interesting read. However, I think that his view and only taking his view is something that can be very dangerous.
Why do you think that Warren's book is dangerous? You mentioned dangerous, and expand on that. Explain what do you mean with dangerous.
Well, Alex, it's dangerous because it causes danger. No. What happens is the problem that I have with this and why I consider it dangerous is that it leads to a concept where management is dismissed and the manager and the image of the manager is dismissed. And this is something that should not happen. Joder.
We have a technical problems.
Welcome back. Sorry for that stop. We had a little bit of trouble, but we were discussing here with Mark Warren's view on leadership. Can you continue on that, please?
So as I was saying, Alex, the problem is that Warren tends to only discuss leadership and ignores the manager aspect of it. And the problem I have with this is that managers are necessary, and through this idea and idealization of the leader, the manager is downplayed. For me, and this is something that of course is not original and I cannot take full credit of it, is that leadership and management are like the two circles of a Venn diagram. One being very personal in the case of leadership, and the other being resource and asset management. And the ideal point should be somewhere where both of these have equal weight, and that middle area of the Venn diagram, that's where people should be trying to aim for, not necessarily just being leaders. It's necessary. Leaders on their own will not necessarily be managers, and managers on their own will not necessarily be leaders. You need the combination.
Well, that's all for today. We don't have enough time, but thank you very much, Marc, for
pleasure.
being
Thank
here.
you for having me.
Please make sure to check Marc's book, Your Boss, Neither Leader Nor Manager. Thank you very much and see you next week.